Dr. Loftus, please refer to Exhibit AA, page 4, the second last page of this format of your testimony. This deals with the use of temperature to determine death interval. Would you like to take us through this briefly? In the light of Dr. Khan's concessions, you don't need to go to every reference.
Okay. Yeah, but lady, the idea of this presentation is to just to highlight to the court the most important thing is that you have to take so many factors into account regarding whether the body is dressed on this type of surface the body is lying on and so forth. And I thought to start this discussion, maybe next slide please, just worthwhile.
Sorry. You're already onto the slide.
No, you can just.
Well, my lady, may I then hand up as the next exhibit, please? It will be FFF, calculation of period of death according to temperature, with the court's leave.
My apologies for that, my lady. I was meaning my next block, and it came through as next slide, so my apologies for that. I'm still dealing with this.
Carry on.
So the first thing, just to say a few words about the physiology of heat loss, because that will determine how you lose heat after death or even now. So there are 4 ways that you lose heat, the body lose heat. The one is radiation, which means that if you stand here and if you are not dressed, for instance, the heat, if you are warmer than the surrounding temperature, you will radiate heat. It's like the sun radiates heat. But then another way is the principle of convection. Now, convection is that if I am, let's say, naked, standing here, the air immediately in contact with my body will heat up. And that will form like a little layer. So it will tend to protect you. That's in water, for instance. In cold water, if you stand still, you tend to feel a bit warmer. The problem is if there's movement, and that warmer air layer is the whole time removed, then you will lose heat through convection. And the practical importance here, that will be, for instance, each time a door open and wind move through the room. And then another important one in this case, which I think I would like to, in my calculations, to bring in, is the thing about conduction. And conduction is when you lose heat from one body to another. For instance, if a warm body is lying on a tile floor, there will be heat loss. So the deceased had 3 possibilities of heat loss. The one was radiation, the one was convection, and we don't know exactly the impact of that, and then it was conduction through the tile floor. So what I then did is I said, okay, let me look at the transcript, and in the next column which says other factors to be taken into account, I've taken the main one, cold tile floor, and I've looked at the state of whether the body was dressed or not dressed, and I've also looked at the temperature differences between the bathroom and the bedroom. And my lady can just guide me. I've got the transcript. Do you want me to read each?
It's not necessary, Dr. Loftus.
I think the witness was speaking to me. You can only refer to those sections which you feel is relevant so that I can understand what you're basing your expert opinion on.
Well, lady, on page 341 of the transcript, that
This is the testimony of who?
Dr. Khan. 341. He's dealing with the questions put him. Now, did you measure the temperature of the floor in the bathroom to check that there was no underfloor heating? And he said the ambient temperature is measured next to the body because the body is on the floor, so the thermometer was placed on the ground. And then he later said, no, that is now line 15. No, we don't usually take the surface of the floor. So I'm a bit confused there, whether it was taken or not. and whether he brought it into his subsequent calculations. If I must just, page 393, also Dr. Khan, 393, that is line 20, my lady. It's now about the state of the floor. It says, it's great put to him, and furthermore, it was made, as I saw it, I observed these sort of clay tiles. And then he responded and said, that's correct, yeah. And then it is put to him, which are incredibly cold to walk on, certainly, especially if barefoot in winter, not so. And then he said, it can be cold, that's right. So all that I'm saying is that Dr. Khan, from his evidence, I couldn't find that he did measure it. He definitely didn't bring it into his calculations, and he admitted that the tile floor could have been cold. I have to just say that is not what I read here. He admits that it can be cold. So then the next thing is the undressed body state, and there we have got the photos, whether the bathrobe was all the way down, not. There's the story about the red throw. It is in different evidence, from different sources. So I'm not going to go down that aspect, although there's
just for clarity, that the rear throw was at some point placed over the body of the deceased.
That's correct. Yeah, my lady, that's also, but I don't know exactly what point.
That's fine.
Okay. Then I just want to go to the important one, that is 354. And the reason why this is important, I just want to highlight to the court that for the calculations, for to be naked, the bottom part of the body can be naked, and you can still have your shoulders can still be covered. So if the gown was pulled up, then but the lower back was exposed, then it will be regarded as naked. And that is in 354. Number one, the bathrobe was only about, there's no Dr. Izak Loftus, the bathrobe was only about halfway down and then towards the right-hand side. So I've taken that into consideration also. So if I can now move on to temperature differences between the bathroom and bedroom. On page 340, he does comment on the bathroom being opened and closed. Again, how many times and all of that we don't know, but it's another unknown factor then to just take into account. And that is said on 340, page 8. He said, do you know for how long and when the bathroom door stood open? And then he said, sorry, can you just repeat that? And then the questions put to him, and then he said, so I was informed that the bathroom door, this is now line 15 of page 340, was opened between 8:15 and 8:30. I wasn't informed further that the bathroom was closed again after that. So again, what I'm just pointing out is another unknown.
It's a variable.
So, but it all impacts on how scientific we can and exact we can become with the calculation, because all these variables add up. So now what I've done, I've just got a PowerPoint presentation there, which is now
double F.
And I would like to take the court just through it to just illustrate the effect of these variables, and specifically the tile temperature, which wasn't brought into account on how it will affect the calculation of time. And I've taken, and I'm open for criticism, I mean, I've just taken the floor temperature as 12.6. This is for illustrative purposes. I'm not saying it was 12.6, but that's a decent temperature, I think, of a bathroom floor in winter, if it's
terracotta tiles.
Terracotta tiles, yeah. Next slide, please. So this is the parameters which we got, and I'm not going to debate how the body temperature was. I think that has been taken up by Dr. Khan, whether it was, how it was calculated. Ambient temperature was that, 17.4. He specifically, as I've read to the court, said that the temperature of the tiles was not measured. It was measured close to the floor, but not the tiles. The body weight was that, And because the body was naked, and because we assume that there was no movement, we can exclude a correction factor. In the Henske normograms, my lady, there are certain correction factors that we applied. I don't know to what detail that has been dealt with in the court, but if I can take the court to...
That was dealt with in detail in cross-examination of Dr. Khan.
But then there's nothing I can add. So if we can then go to the next one, and this is just here, I've calculated it on this temperature of 17.4.
Just show us where the 17.4 is plotted.
On this side, we've got the rectal temperature of the person. So this will be the core temperature or rectal temperature. It doesn't, okay, that's from, my eyes are not, from 0 to, is that 30? 35? And then on the left-hand side, it's the ambient temperature. But one must remember there's a graph for temperatures up to 23 degrees, and there's one for temperatures below 23. So this one here
falls below 23.
For temperatures up to 23. So this will be, like in this case, 17.4. So what I've done here, I've taken the weight of the, the rectal temperature on this leg, and I've taken the ambient temperature on that leg, and I've combined the two. And then there's a fixed line on the normogram. Next slide, please. And what I do is then you look for this point here, which is also a fixed pre-printed point on the form, and you will go through there where this line that you have drawn in across this fixed line, and then you continue towards the outer side. And if I can go to the next slide, where it crosses this semi-arch, which is at 50, she was 52 kilograms, the uncorrected weight, which I've magnified on the next slide. So this is just magnified. So there's my line, there it crossed the, that blue one is my line, my lady. That is the fixed line. This is the line I've now drawn from that circle through. You can see if you go there, it crosses, that is 6, there's 7, there's 9, so excuse me, there's 8, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 on that line of 50. It's just to the left of the 8, and therefore I regard it as 7.9. Read value at intersection is 7.9. Next slide, please. And when I now know that the correction factor, the one that was completely misinterpreted, of 2.8, when I take that into account, 2.8 meaning 2 hours and 48 minutes. Yeah, 2 hours 48 minutes, if I can put it that way. If I take that into account, it gives me a death interval of between 5.1 to 10.6 hours, or 10.7 hours, or otherwise 0.5 hours, 6 minutes. I've now converted the 1 to 6 minutes, and 10:42 minutes before 1 o'clock, which means that, and this is how it has to be read. I mean, there's a 95% probability that the death occurred during the period 2:18 and 7:54. There's no mean value to say the middle, that's 95%. That's the range. There's a 5% chance that it could have been before 2 hours, 18 minutes, or after 7 hours, 45 minutes. So 95%. And interesting is that Henske, Madia, and all the authorities that have been put to court specifically state that it is about the mean value. And I think obviously because many people have made most probably this error. So this is now with the ambient temperature as is, and if I can quickly take the court through the next set of slides.
Before you go further, so
yes,
on the basis of those readings that were made by Dr. Khan, taking into account that he actually didn't take the rectal temperature, ignoring any variations in loss of heat through doors opening and convection and conduction and everything, and all the other factors that were taken up with him in cross-examination, if we just ignore those, the correct interpretation on the temperatures that he took was that there was a 95% probability that death occurred between 18 minutes past 2 and 6 minutes to 8 that morning. Am I correctly understanding that?
Yes, my lady, that is the correct interpretation of how it has to be.
Thank you. Let's move on, as you asked, to the next slide, please.
Okay, the next one I just thought I will just illustrate to the court the effect of if you bring in one of those variables. So what I've said here, I've said, okay, if the room temperature is 17.4 degrees, which he has measured, and the tile temperature measured against the tiles, it's just hypothetical, is 12.6. Then I will take the average, the mean between the two, which will be 15 degrees. So if I now say that the average ambient temperature is 15 degrees and not 17.4, because I'm taking into consideration the surface on which the deceased is lying, which is a cold tile floor. Next slide, please. And I go through the same exercise. Now I've moved, that has stayed the same at the body temperature. This is now at 15, and I take another, next slide, please. It's the same exercise, just with a, now it is at 7.2 hours. So it has moved from 7.9 to 7.2. Next slide, please. And now I do my same calculations, and it says 7.2 hours plus minus 2.8, which is the correction factor, means that the death occurred 4.4 to 10 hours previously, which in then time, 1300 hours as the reference, like, will be death occurred any time between 3 o'clock and 8:36, and they said 95% chance or probability that that's the period of time. So what I can summarize this by just changing the ambient temperature from 17.4 to 15 degrees by taking into consideration the tile temperature. I move the whole window of death 42 minutes later. And that is why, my lady, there are so many variables. I mean, by just taking maybe tile temperature, and I don't say it was 12.6, it could have been less or more, but what I'm getting, I want to illustrate to the court that one must be careful, because it's like most things that, I'm just saying the computer people also say junk in, junk out, that type of thing. If you don't use that, you don't get the correct what you want to get. I'm not saying that with disrespect, I'm just saying it's that it depends on the data.
Thank you. Let's move on to page 5.
May I continue?
You may.
My lady, I just want to, it's fine, that's the last.
So that's the last of the presentation, the PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, that's the last. So that is, page 5, I just want to deal with 2 items that you had raised, and I just think that, especially for the first one, I am in a position to assist the court. And that was, there was a photo, and first of all I want to start off by saying I'm not a blood spatter
I beg your pardon?
I'm not a blood spatter expert. That's for a forensic scientist job, but they are obviously being a medical doctor and knowing what you're seeing and that it's not blood spatter, I'm in a position to give comment, so it's by a roundabout way. There was a photo shown to Dr. Hermel regarding the left eye, where there was an abrasion on the eyebrow, and then a blue discoloration of the upper and the lower eyelid, and then some blood on the frontal aspect. And that is in my bundle photo.
And the high reach instead of the socket.
It was very high resolution, but I've got just one for the court on page 48 of BBB, for BBB. I don't have a photo of that on the screen, but my lady, I'm referring to this area here. which was magnified.
So
And
which page is that?
48
Thank you.
of this bundle that I've handed.
Yes, I've got that.
It is photo 103, according to this.
It's Dr. Khan's photograph, bundle 2 of Exhibit D, photograph 103.
Now, my lady, under unfortunately, high magnification, poor resolution photos that we had, it appears to me that those hemorrhages they're not, the blood is in the pores of the skin. My lady will recall that when I showed the histology, I said that's where the sweat glands and the hair follicles exit. So there are these little indentations. So if you have got hemorrhage lying on the surface, and those are these small little specks, and there's one of them over here in the middle, which in effect I recall was in fact 3 little pores close to one another. Now it looks like a small little hemorrhage. So for me, my lady, I believe that there was blood on that. I mean, there was blood, but was it a spatter? And then the blood was wiped away, either by a pillow, by whatever way. But because if you don't press hard enough, you're not going to clean the pores. It's almost the mechanism of blackheads. You're not going to clean it. So that's why if you look at a high magnification, you see the little specks there. It's not like...
More like a swipe motion. Is it more like a swipe motion?
Yeah, or any motion you swipe it away. So when it happened, I can't tell you whether it was the pillow, whether the deceased, whether the accused, anyone could have just swiped it away, but I don't believe that's a spatter. But as I say, I'm not a blood spatter expert, but that falls into, I think, as a pathologist who has been next to the patient's been operated on. You know how it looks like when they clean the... So that's the one thing I would like to indicate to the court. Another thing is the significance of the black eye. Now, it was originally said that there were 2 injuries to the left eye. There was an abrasion on the eyebrow, and there was a blue eye, which could have been due to a fist and whatever. Now, my lady, that's the same lesion. In fact, it has got very, very important information for the court. And if I may take you to the last page, page 49 of this bundle, my lady, that I've handled BB1. Sorry, this is BB 49. This is from Nice. And I want to read, and I'm going to read the whole section about black eyes. The usual periorbital, that is meaning surrounding the eye, hematoma, which means bleeding, or black eye is usually caused by a direct punch or or kick into this eye socket. But the pathologist must always consider the several alternative explanations. A black eye may be the result of, number 1, direct violence, which may or may not be associated with abrasion, that is a cut, or laceration on the upper cheek, eyebrow, nose, or other part of the face. Gravitational seepage of blood beneath the scalp from a bruise or laceration on or above the eyebrow. Survival and at least a partial upright posture of the head must have been maintained for at least some minutes, usually longer, between the time of injury and death. When the scalp lesion is high up on the frontal region, meaning close to the hairline, this time will probably be measured in hours. My lady, what Knight is saying here, that if I have a cut, and I mean we see it often, if I have a cut here on my eyebrow, the blood will, due to gravity, dissect downwards into the soft tissue surrounding my eye. So I will have a cut here. The eyebrow will not be discolored because the blood goes in the planes underneath, but it presents at the eyelids.
When you say the blood, you mean below the skin surface?
Yeah, the bruise now, if I can put it that way, which is part of the laceration because... Can I explain to the court?
Yes, you may.
Maybe there's soft tissue injuries by blunt force, by, let's say, a plank or whatever. There's a spectrum of 3 changes that you see. The first injury, which only needs relatively minimal force, is a bruise, because that only ruptures the blood vessels. More energy will take away the part of the epidermis, the surface, and that will be an abrasion. And the focus where most of the force will be, will split the skin. That will be the laceration. So that is when we look at it, and you can see it on that wound. In fact, you will see the laceration in the middle, surrounded by a ring of abrasion, and then a bruise surrounding that, because that is how an injury develops. You've hit it the whole surface, but the major force was, let's say, the major force is there. That's where you will have the laceration, but then you will have less injury, which will be the abrasion, and even more less injury will be the bruise. That is how I explain blunt force injuries to the skin. Now, in this case, then, you will have the laceration on the surface. You've got an abrasion there, which, by the way, is symmetrically for me, which means it is a frontal impact. It's not from an angle. And then you've got the hemorrhage. Now, the hemorrhage is in the soft tissue, extending into the underlying soft tissue. And that has dissected into the periorbital tissue, creating now a black eye. But that's part of the same process. But the significance, as Knight says, it means that survival and at least a partially upright position of the head must have been maintained for at least some minutes. So that's what it's implying in practice, is that between when the blow was delivered, or when she sustained that injury, and when she died, there must have been, I said, I think to quote him, some minutes now. How much some is, I don't know, but it's not an injury at the time of death, if my lady understands what I get in that. And then and then the rest is about fractures of the skull, where you can also get a blue eye or a black eye, but I don't think that's relevant.
And what about being in an upright position?
For the blood to have drained from the injury on the eyebrow to present around the eye, she must have been in an upright position, because you need gravity for that. So that is what he's saying, is that for those two to occur, or maybe I must rephrase, for the abrasion and laceration on the eyebrow to present with contusion around the eye, the head must have been in an upright position for, to quote him, some minutes. And then he goes on, if it was higher up, it would have taken longer.
Could it have been hours?
Yeah, it could have been. I mean, if the problem is not so much, if it is too short, then it may not present like that, if there is not enough time. But if it is there, then, if it has manifested itself, then you can't measure it from there anymore. It's
Right.
there.
Okay, let's move back to the last page of your agenda, AA. The question of the alleged fecal material on the floor. Do you have any comments in that regard?
Yeah, my lady, I was here when it was put to Dr. Perumal. I must say it's very difficult for me to comment on it for a couple of reasons. One reason is I don't know as far, maybe the learned court can assist me, whether that was analyzed to be confirmed as human fecal matter. I don't know, because I couldn't find it in the records that it has been.
It wasn't. There's no such evidence.
The second thing is that I then looked at all the photos, and maybe I've missed the photo, but I was looking for a photo where it was taken from the posterior aspect of the body, unclothed, so that I could see if there was any fecal stain of the buttocks, because gravity will influence the way it goes, because that would have given me an idea why it wasn't on the gown, which was also put to Dr. Perumal in his cross-examination, because what I'm trying to say, if it was present on the deceased buttocks, it would have been highly likely present on the gown. But if it wasn't, if I have a photo and the buttocks are clean, then I won't expect anything on the gown if the court follow my argument. But that's how far I can get.
Thank you. Just for the record, I should have really asked this right at the beginning of your testimony. The accused is unknown to you, is that right?
That's correct, my lady.
Never met him before this case in your life?
Not at all.
And you were asked by the defense to sit in during the testimony of Dr. Peramore?
That's
for
correct, my
certain
lady.
portions, if not the whole. And you were also asked to consider the transcript of evidence of this case, and in particular that of Dr. Khan and Dr. Abraham. Is that correct?
Yes, my lady, that's correct.
And that of the accused.
In fact, I read most of the transcripts.
If you were to sum up, in terms of your expertise as a dual specialist, in terms of the probabilities, the likelihood, what would you say? That this was an ante-mortem hanging, in other words, a hanging with a cord, or that the cord was applied after death to simulate it?
My lady, first part of the question, whether I believe that the ligature was applied ante-mortem and that hanging caused the death of the deceased. I do believe that there is, for me, morphological proof in that area of hemorrhage which I've shown to the court, the contusion, in the areas of hemorrhage in the underlying structure, that when that ligature exerted its effect on the body, the deceased was alive. I don't have any doubt to make that statement.
When the ligature was exerted?
No, when the ligature exerted its force.
When the ligature exerted its force, the person was alive.
Was alive. So for me, in fact, I'm very happy with that statement as it is. But obviously, as I've said, one always have, in forensic pathology, you always qualify and say, I cannot exclude other causes of force applied to the neck, although I believe that the most probable cause of death was death by hanging. It's a bit of a roundabout way, but I have to say that, as I've said, I'm getting back, I've said it before, seldom say never, seldom say always, so I have to add that.
Right. My lady, that is the end of my evidence in chief, but before I formalize that, I'm just not sure what my learned friend's plans or intentions are. If he is, as I expect, to ask for a postponement, then I'd rather not formally close my evidence in chief at this stage, but keep it open until we resume, although, as in previous cases, the chances of me asking anything further are very slow.
Okay. Stefanica?
Yes, my lady, the state has asked for a postponement, and it will not be ready this week. We've got tomorrow and Wednesday. Unfortunately, this is...
Sorry, you're a little bit softer today. You'll have to speak a little bit louder. I can't hear you.
I will not be ready
Yes.
this week to start cross-examining this witness, my lady, due to the nature of this evidence, the fact that I've only been handed what was testified today, the documents, etc., this morning at the curriculum meeting.
Okay, thank you. Well, then that leaves us to the end of this week is the end of term. Then it's recess. Courts are closed. Trials do not proceed during recess. The term commences on the 30th of July, am I right? And during that week, we are doing all judges are doing, permanent judges are doing full bench appeals, which I'm sitting in on. That means that we could commence on the 6th of August, but Mr. Van der Spey would like to address me on that.
My lady, I was expecting that Dr. Loftus would have been completed by now and that we would have to be looking at Professor Simon on that week, and also the question of not having an instructing attorney. As I indicated, I'm available that week. May I, with the court's leave, just ask Dr. Loftus if he's available on the 6th of August?
I'll make myself available.
Then I'm very happy to be postponed to the 6th of August.
Thank you. And your limitation of your instructing
My lady,
attorney?
I will get hold of an instructing attorney.
Okay. Ms. Van that's in order with you?
That suits me.
Thank you. Dr. Loftus, thank you very much. Must have been a long day for you. We'll proceed on the 6th of August with this trial, and then you will proceed on that day. Mr. Van der Spey will in all likelihood close his evidence in chief, and then cross-examination will proceed. Where's Mr. Rohde? There you go. Mr. Rohde will proceed on the 6th of August. Your bail is extended on the same terms and conditions. However, as is customary, I will prepare an order which I will let your counsel have, as I've done previously, setting out the exact terms and conditions. And you are required to be back here on the 6th of August. We will start court at 10 if you could be here at 9:30. Thank you very much.
As the court please.